Frederic, you were in Bangalore when you were young, and now you are here once again nearly 60 or 65 years later. But in between you had a very major Indian connection, and that was with one of India's most famous chess players.
Okay, I'll tell you all about that. Let's sit down for a coffee. Okay, you want to know about Vishy Anand, yes?
Yeah, of course.
So what happened was, many years ago, we developed ChessBase, as you know, and I've told you in a previous interview. And we had this fledgling program, which had just been released. And I think it was 1986 or 87. I was in London at a tournament showing this program to the chess players there. And at some stage, somebody came to me and said, I'd like to introduce you to a young player who wants to meet you. And I met him, and he was an Indian, a young boy. And I spoke to him, and then I continued working. I said, I'll continue in a moment. And then half an hour later, he came to me and said, I have to leave now. I said, you've been waiting, I'm so sorry. And so I had an intense, short conversation with him. And I asked him, how strong are you? And he said something like 2480 or 25. I said, oh my goodness, who are you? And then he told me who he was. And I asked him when he was going to play his next tournament. And he said, in a week from now. And I said, do you fly back to India? He said, no, I can't afford that. I said, so what do? Stay in a third-class hotel? And he said, no, in a fourth-class hotel. So I said to him, listen, you seem to be a very nice kid. Why don't you come and stay with us? We're in Hamburg, close to Hamburg. And he, politely took that to notice. And a few months later, I got a phone call from him saying, were you serious about this invitation? I said, yeah, sure, come. And he said, okay, and he came. And my family said, my wife said, you have invited a chess prodigy for a whole week. Okay, let's see. And then he arrived, and after like 1 or 2 hours, the family was just enchanted. They said, he's such a nice boy. We want to keep him, he can come anytime. So we were enjoying ourselves with him. And then came the first problem. In the evening, dinner. And we said, we served dinner, and he said, oh, I don't eat that. No, I don't eat that either. Not that either. So he didn't eat anything, no eggs, no cheese, no meat, of course. And he's a complete vegetarian. So we went into panic, and we thought, what are we going to do? We rustled up something which was vegetarian, and the next day we started boiling vegetables. And of course it's tasteless, and we're not very good at that. So we bought a book on South Indian vegetarian cooking, and we started cooking vegetarian South Indian food for him. And we found it delicious. So it was a problem solved. And this boy, of course, was Vishy Anand, as a young player, very, very strong, very talented. And we had just launched ChessBase. And he sat in my study, and there are pictures of him working with my little son, Tommy, watching him. And he enjoyed himself tremendously. And this is what I saw for the first time, that a super grandmaster, or a grandmaster at the time, just a grandmaster, was sitting there looking at hundreds of games a day and enjoying himself in a way. He would suddenly stop, and he'd come into the living room and drag me into the study and say, come, you have to look at this, you have to look at this. And he'd show me moves which I didn't understand. And he would burst into laughter, and so he was actually having a lot of fun studying the games. And I have to tell you one little anecdote which has remained in my mind. One day at breakfast, he said to me, you know, there are some errors in the database. Results are wrong, or some other errors. So I said, oh, that's very useful, because these are, I'm giving you raw games. They haven't been edited yet. People in the office are doing that. So can you make a note of any games where you find errors? And then they can use this in the office. This is a muasim. This is wonderful traffic. And,
this is India, yes.
Yeah,
so
this
there
is
has
India.
To, we don't have to put in background music.
This is amazing. It's 1:45 and there's a muasim singing. Okay, so I said, make a note of whatever you discover which is wrong. And what I assumed when he's playing through the games. But this kid takes the pen and says, okay, game number 167 has a false result. Game 212 is the same as game 413. So he has actually learned, not just remembered the games, he has remembered the record number in the database. His mind was just still completely empty. He had lots and lots of disk space on his mind, and he was just learning everything.
So you met like a lot of great players and personalities. Do you think Vishy's memory stands out from the rest?
Absolutely. His memory and his speed of thought, which I will tell you in a moment after this prayer ceremony is over. Can we take a quick pause?
Okay, so we are back. No.
Prayer time is over. We were talking about his speed of understanding chess. He not only was able to learn and study databases at an enormous speed and retain everything. You could ask him about any game and any position, he'd go there. But just, show him a position, and within seconds, he understood the position and knew the best lines. One day I was with him at a tournament. I used to accompany him to a number of tournaments, and we were walking along the analysis room where people sit after the games and they play through the games and analyze with their opponent. And he looked at, he glanced at a game while he was walking by and said, very nice, Rook E8 or something like that, and walked on. And the player behind the white pieces got up and followed us and came to him and said, you were watching my game? This was Joel Benjamin, yeah. You were watching my game? He said, no. He said, but how could you see that move? And he said, well, it's very nice, because of this and this and this. And he said, you saw that while walking by? We've been analyzing it for 3-4 minutes now, and we didn't find it. And he was just shattered. And this was Vishy, he could see everything very, very quickly. And in fact, I kept telling him, you have to think longer. He would sometimes play an entire game with 6 or 7 minutes of time. And I say, you can't play so fast, you have to think about your moves. And sometimes he would say, okay, I will do that. And then he would think and think and think and play the move he thought of in the first 10 seconds. So this was Vishy, the fastest player alive.
But when he came to your home at the age of 16?
No, he was about 18.
18. Did you feel like he had this world championship material in him?
I was absolutely sure that he would become world champion for a very simple reason. He was so strong, he was right there at the top without the systematic training of Soviet players. Now when Kasparov was 11, 12 years old or even younger, they discovered he's a super talent in chess. So immediately he got 2 or 3 grandmasters to coach him. He did chess study, he got everything he needed to become the greatest player in history. Vishy, when he was 10 or 11 years old, and they discovered he's a very, very good chess player, his parents said, okay, you can go to the chess club, but first you must finish your homework. So this was the level, and still he had made it to almost Kasparov's level. So he was immensely talented, and I was convinced he's going to be world champion. I spent a lot of time goading him into it. For 1 year, I kept calling him average. And this was average grandmaster, because he was not picking up as fast as I wanted him to. And so I used to tease him about this. Once I put up a diagram of a horrible loss he had made in the house when he came to visit me. He hasn't forgotten that. He says, this is the kind of thing Frederic did. But I was goading him into realizing his full potential. And that he did. He became world champion, he won 5 titles, and he has become like the most charismatic person in Indian chess. We'll come to that in a moment.
So your acquaintance with Anand was not just for 1 or 2 meetings, it went on and you became friends. Even at a personal level, you had a very close relationship with him.
Yes, he migrated from friend to becoming part of my family. He came 36 times to stay, sometimes for 3 or 4 days, sometimes for a week, sometimes for 2 weeks. And I have proof of this in my guest book. My wife always says, don't exaggerate. He was there maybe 20 times. No, over 30 times. And this was all very nice and we loved it. Every time he came, we had a lot of fun. And then one day he got married. And then the rate of visiting us declined tremendously.
But talking about marriage, you did attend his marriage, yes?
Yes. Do you want to hear that story?
Is it an interesting one?
Well, what happened was he invited me, of course, to come to Chennai for his wedding. And he invited a very good friend of ours, common friend, who is a top editor of the Spiegel magazine. And I said, I can't go to Chennai, for heaven's sake. It's halfway around the world. But my friend at the Spiegel said, Fred, we're going there. So he and his wife and I got into a plane and we went to Chennai. And it was a marriage which takes 2 or 3 days. And we attended the whole ceremony. Unfortunately, video cameras hadn't been invented yet. Well, no, okay, I didn't own a video camera or didn't take it with me. And so I have lots and lots of photographs, but no video. And it was extraordinary. There were hundreds of people. And at the reception, there were 1,000 people at least. And we saw the entire ceremony. And he had married a young girl named Aruna, who, whenever they're together with me, Europeans ask them, was this an arranged marriage? And if they're with me, then I say, no, it was a Catalogue marriage, and to tease them. And I claim that Vishy and I looked through a catalogue and we said, how about page 7? Spectacular. And he said, no, too expensive in maintenance. And then we came to page 14, we found Aruna and said, that's the one. But of course, that's a joke. What actually happened was, I was driving home from the office in Hamburg one day, and Vishy says to me, Fred, I'm thinking of getting married. And I said, oh, wow, really? How old are you? Yeah, this is the right time. Go for it. Who is she? And he said, I don't know. And I almost crashed the car. I said, you're not doing this arranged marriage thing, are you? And he said, yeah, why not? I said, come on, this is the late end of the 20th century. You have to, move into the modern world. You can't do that. And so and I tried to talk him out of it, but he said, no, it's the best way. So I was dissatisfied with that. And then one day I went to visit him and his family in Chennai. And on the way I stopped off in Bangalore, here, not far from here. And I was invited by some industrialist, a very influential person, to a breakfast. And I sat there to South Indian breakfast meal, and he put his daughter opposite me. And she was about 19 years old. And after the meal, I went to the father and said, "Congratulations, you have a fantastic daughter. She's beautiful, she's very intelligent, and I had a marvelous time talking to her." And he said, "Oh yeah, thank you. Here, let me give you my card." And he gave me 3 cards. And I said, "Oh, you gave me 3. He said, yes, take them." And I said, "Why 3 cards?" But put them in my pocket. And then I went to Chennai and I told Anand about this. And I said, "Why did I get 3 cards?" He said, "Oh, this is a marriage thing." I said, "Why?" And he says, he wants you to give it to eligible young men you meet. And that evening we had dinner with the family, and he has a very traditional Brahmin family. And I was sitting there and we were talking about marriage and things like that. And I pulled out one of the cards. And Vishy was sitting next to me and he said, "Don't do it, Fred." But of course I couldn't resist. And I said to Vishy's father, "Look, I met this girl and so on." And I gave her the card. And he looked at me in horror because I'm not in the class which does this, I'm not a Brahmin. I'm not even a Hindu. So he looked at me in shock. And then he took the card and he examined it and said, "Ah, from Bangalore. And they have their office in the main street and they're Sindhi. So they are very affluent and so on." "Okay, very good." And he put into a little index which he had and just filed it away. And then later when Vishy said, "Okay, I'm ready for marriage," he looks up in the index. And I realized this is a really good system, because instead of trying to meet the person you're going to spend your life with in a bar or at a party or something, they find an ideal match. And then what happens is they have an invitation. The girl comes with her entire family, visits the boy, and the girl and the boy then go into a room and they drink a cup of tea together. And then they come out 10 minutes later, and now both sides are able to say, "No, we're not interested," without insulting the other side. And this is not going to work. Or they say, "Okay, let's carry on." And then they go to a restaurant, the boy and the girl, and have a Coke together. And then negotiations continue, and at some stage they decide, "Okay, this is it." And then they get married. And every single arranged marriage I have encountered so far has been tremendously successful. I've never found one where they said, "Oh, that was a terrible mistake." No. And look, I'm going to visit Aruna later this week, and she became also part of my family. And she turned out to be the loveliest person I've met in my life, maybe. And she came quite often. She taught me the finest methods of the fine points of South Indian cooking. And now we do it for ourselves because Vishy doesn't come. He's engaged in other things. He had a son and he lives in Chennai, which is far away. So I don't see him that often except at tournaments. But back to his wedding. Now we came to this wedding and we enjoyed all the ceremony, and it includes carrying the bride and the groom in piggyback, and they have little rods and they fight with each other. Just play fighting. Why? Because of child marriage. In previous times, you had a lot of child marriages. So young boys and girls, even just early teens, they would get married and you had to entertain them. Or maybe even before they were in their teens. And so they had little games. So it was very nice, and all the ceremony. And then came dinner. And dinner I have to describe to you. It was incredible. We came into this huge hall and there were long tables, like 10 meters long, and there were benches around them. And my friend Hayo and his wife Shuma and his wife Susanna, we climbed over the bench and sat there, and they said, why are there leaves on the table? And I said, that's your plate. And they said, okay. And they were they were not sure they're going to be able to do this. And then after a while, a half-naked man comes along the other side with a bucket and a huge spoon, and he dishes out a spoonful of rice and goes plop onto each of our plates. And they looked in, they didn't know what to think of it. And they said, there are no spoons or forks. I said, no, you have to eat with your hands. Oh no, we can't do that. Then the second man came, also half naked, and did a big spoonful of vegetables. And then someone came with a big spoonful of curds. And then someone came with a little bucket and a little bit of pickles. And they sat in front of there and said, what do we do? And I said, try it. And I started eating with my fingers. And they never done anything like this in their lives. I said, no, we can't do this. We don't know how. I said, try it. So Susanna, she took a little and she tasted it and said, Hayo, this is pretty good. So Hayo started eating. And then they joined in, and then they ate more. And they got into it. They were using their fingers and eating and saying, this is spectacular. And by the end of the meal, Hayo said to me, look, Fred, if we hire 3 of them and fly them to Hamburg, we can get leaves from Africa, and we could set up this restaurant. So he's planning to, import the whole thing to Hamburg. That is how quickly you can convert a North German to South Indian vegetarian food. So it was very, very nice. And we had a spectacularly good time at Vishy's wedding, and I wouldn't exchange that for anything.
One question that's always on my mind, and because you know Vishy so well, you would be the right person to answer. How is Vishy so humble and so polite in spite of being such a big star and such a huge world champion?
Yeah, he's different to a number of other world champions I've known, in that he's accessible and he's always civil and polite. Now the others are sometimes very brash and very impolite and very hostile. I must tell you that there's a reason for that. I have accompanied Kasparov on dozens and dozens of events and PR shows and everything. And Gary is not a friendly person to journalists and to people who address him. But the reason I know is that he is accosted by 20 to 30 people wherever he appears. So somebody will come up to him and say, hello, my name is and I want to in Dortmund, and say he doesn't understand who he is and what he's saying. And after about 10 of these, he sort of blocks off. If anyone comes to him, he says no. So he has a manager, which is now his wife. And for a while I was doing this. So if anyone approached him, I would get up and talk to the person and say, no, this and that, and solve any problems or requests. If it was important, I would take this person to Gary and say, Gary, this is Sagar Shah, he's from ChessBase India, and he wants to ask you about something. Gary would be charming to you because it's filtered and he knows this has a purpose. Now Anand he's such a nice person that he cannot resist. If anyone talks to him, he talks back. He is kind. He is overloaded probably, but it's his nature. So he doesn't need a manager to shield him from the public or to filter the public. He's just a very nice guy.
But like one man has simply changed the way Indian chess is. Yeah, you met a lot of talents on this trip. How do you see Indian chess and the role of Anand in it?
Okay, I need to remind you that chess was invented in India in the 8th century or something. I believe that one person sat there and invented the game in 1 week. And it's become the greatest game in the history of mankind. And it was invented in India, in west of India. And then India sort of slumbered away. And I need to tell you about a friend of mine, Helmut Pfleger. He's a German grandmaster. And in the late 70s, I think it was, I invited him to come to Bangalore to play a clock symbol. They had contacted me and they wanted someone, and I said, would you do a clock symbol? He said, yeah, it would be very interesting to go to Bangalore. And I said, okay, it would be 8 players and, clock symbol, you have the same time as them. What is the highest level of strength? Because what you normally do in Europe is when you do a clock symbol, you have to say the strongest player mustn't be stronger than 2200 ELO. And Helmut said, oh, anything, don't say anything. They can bring on anything. I said, can you do it? He said, no problem. So it was no problem. If it was today, I would invite Helmut to play one-on-one against a 12-year-old boy, and he would be struggling. It would be tough. This is how Indian chess has progressed. No question of him playing a clock symbol against chess players. So now I suddenly realized, by meeting all these kids, and you introduced me to half a dozen budding grandmasters or already grandmasters who have a profound understanding of chess. I tested it, who are going all the way to super grandmaster strength and who are 13 years old. And at the tournament I also saw little children playing chess, where you say how cute, they can actually play the game, but they're sitting there across from a grown man who is suffering. He's sitting there and thinking, what do I do now? So they're clearly very, very strong. So India is on its path to becoming the superpower of chess. And I guarantee here that within a few years, maybe 5 or 10 years, India will dominate chess completely. Like 20% of the top 100 players in the world will be Indian. 25% maybe. 20% of the top 10 players will be Indian. I can tell you their names, in fact. One is Nihal, the other is Pragnanda, the other is Gukesh. So, I know them. These 3 are going to be in the top 10, guaranteed. And so, and this is all the result, and many of them are from Chennai. So this is all the result of Vishy Anand becoming a chess god in India. And I saw this at the tournament, and please show our viewers how Vishy Anand is received when he arrives at the tournament. Other players are received by dignitaries who shake their hands and so on, not Vishy. Anyway, it was very impressive, and this has all been done by Vishy. He has converted an entire country into a chess country.
Frederic, those were some amazing insights into the life of Vishy Anand. One thing which is common to you and Anand is longevity. You are 73 years old, yet so fresh and energetic. And same with Vishy, he will turn 50 soon, and he's playing at Vaikanze and all the top tournaments in the world.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, for me, it's a little bit of a shock. Vishy, 50 years old? He's the kid who was at my home, who was playing with my grandson, with my son, sorry. My grandson was still a long time away. He was playing with Tommy and throwing Tommy over his shoulder, and I was telling him, don't kill the child. And he was a little boy playing in our home. And now he's turning 50, but he's still playing world-class chess. And at that age, except for Korchnoi, everyone has given up. Kasparov gave up stopped playing chess, didn't give up, but retired from chess when he was at the top of the world, but he was in his 40s, wasn't he? Yeah. So, congratulations, Vishy, this is amazing. Keep going as long as you can, and I'll keep watching you as long as I can.